Thank you. Let's see that if I can keep your attention level high after 2 long days. Well, Greta was very much present in this conference, so there's no need for me to show her. I think the battle on climate, for the climate, was described on all levels. Well, Italy is a peninsula with 7,456 kilometers of coastline, 15 regions, 645 municipalities that border on the sea. So 1/10 of the population that lives on islands, and this increases during the summer, during the tourist season. Might seem obvious, but those who are interested in this idea of sea highways are Italy and Greece in Europe, mainly Italy. Italy is a country that has recorded a great cultural development and history because the sea brings people closer. It's not a hurdle. We had the 4 maritime republics, and we are commonly known as people of seamen. 348 polyfunctional ports along our coastline, more than 500 if we include other infrastructure. So every 14 kilometers of coastline, of course, on the Mediterranean Sea, there's the highest concentration. So the infrastructure is there. It is pretty consistent because we know how to spend money on concrete. Because when we have to build warehouses, we are great, and public funds are spent for this purpose. But then they tend to forget to create connections. It's just as if you built just a railway station and no trucks. Well, the fleet flying the Italian flag is pretty big. We are ranking first when it comes to cruises. So we have a fleet flying the Italian flag that is very important. And Fincantieri is a leading company at a global level. And the leading companies for maritime engines, and in particular liquefied natural gas, are Italian. So maybe Baxilla is not fully Italian because the owners are not Italian, but they are based in Italy. So we have a pretty important fleet. So I thought it was crazy to think about building a bridge over the Straits of Messina, because if we have such a fleet, so we should invest on the fleet, not on bridges. Probably because we don't understand what intangible infrastructure means. But there's one thing we are particularly interested in. I've been raising this question for many years now, like LNG. In 2006, I brought the first truck to Genoa to the initiative of the Green Party. Well, the traffic cops wouldn't let me in because they didn't know that it was a green truck. There were 2 ministers back then, Pecoraro Scanio and Mussi, that signed the authorization to make sure that I could at least show that something like that could work. Well, they weren't great back then because the engines were not as efficient as they are now, but they were serving their purpose. Then the emission control area was established in the Mediterranean. We have heard from Carnival. Carnival was fined with a 200,000 euro ticket for mooring in France. So emissions are measured in ports right now, and ships have the worst emissions ever. So the ports are the most polluted places in the world because they have this mean diesel oil, if I can define it this way. So all the residues that Eni was referring to from the refining process of gas oil are used in ships. We used to make money out of that waste years ago, but now this waste ends up in ships. These ships are fueled with this terrible stuff. And the emission control area, of course, will play a role because there will be stronger limits imposed on emissions. So it's up to you, it's up to us, it's up to the idea of biomethane to do something. We have here a representative from Asso Armatori that's been following our conference that realized that we have the possibility to change the state of play. So I won't elaborate on the slide, but we should stop polluting that much. So we need to change. Change is necessary. And hopefully no one is going to mount a wrong campaign. So in the North Sea, the Baltic Sea, well, you can't moor unless you have an engine that is efficient. You've seen this slide already. Well, I would take the opportunity of what you just said to interrupt. So in northern Italy, ferries or passengers transport modes are methane fueled. But I was... no, gas oil. It's gas oil. I'm referring to the North Sea. There are some ferries. Well, in the Baltic Sea. It's LNG fueled, but it's the other side of the coin. If we are not equipped, we would risk losing something. I was thinking of cruises when the Carnival representative was here. Well, of course, if you have to sail to a place where there's no LNG, you won't be able to have a cruise with an LNG ship. There's something like that to be considered. We might be left out if the LNG navigation is gaining ground, because we won't be able to provide a ship with a full tank in port, so we might risk being excluded. Yes, definitely. But we are going to see innovation is born of the biomethane revolution. There are microscale liquefactors, but that thing there, I can't pronounce it in English, the speaker says, are very efficient. And it is possible to refuel directly, even if there's no methane grid available. So you can transport methane directly with a tank, with a ton truck, directly to the port. The government just declared last week, and you can see it on my Facebook page, the government has declared that they are in favor of the development of storage plants for LNG or bio-LNG, of course, at a micro scale all over Italy. So they have no problems whatsoever in granting authorizations for LNG deposits. Please note what's the importance of this transfer. Well, a tank of bio-LNG is worth 600 tanks of CNG, 600, 400. It's just like having an endless line, so it is also efficient in terms of transportation. So the combination, the alliance between the SNAM network and the biomethane network, between these two grids, will contribute to our prompt development, because one thing is to do small interventions but big, and one thing is to do many but small.
So, harbors, ports are amongst the most polluted areas in the world, and of course there are many solutions we can adopt, but what we can do, something that has not really been said, but it's a dual fuel solution. So for the coming 30 years all over the planet, there's going to be a huge number of vehicles that we will be using the very bad version of diesel fuel at sea and also road-based. So we have to find a solution with dual fuel technologies, because we are growing also perhaps utilizing hydrogen in order to contribute to finally clean up, eliminate those emissions. We can really promote transition towards electric engines, but without forgetting the rest, because this transition cannot take place without trying to reduce pollution. So it's better if you don't die because of pollution during the transition. We don't understand, for instance, why Venice ferries do not adopt the dual fuel solution. The decision makers of Venice clearly are not really, really aware of what the situation is. They must be taking a nap or something. Well, the interpreters cannot hear what has just been said without a microphone, but anyway, this is a map showing you that Italy is the perfect country for sea highways. Think that European infrastructure have cost 1/3 compared with our motorways. So we are a country in which we criticize ourselves very much, but much of the debt results from the fact that we are a long peninsula with lots of mountains, with people who want to travel along that road anyway. It's like a disease. We have to realize that we are a peninsula, and therefore we should adopt appropriate solutions. Can I mention something that happened to me? I used to have this motorhome, and I wanted to go to Sicily, and I did not want to travel up to Sicily with a motorhome that goes very slowly, a caravan. So I thought I should be able to board my motorhome in Genoa to go to Sicily. Well, it's impossible. So it couldn't be done. So I was really surprised, and yes, and I thank you for asking this question. In 2004, I organized this dual initiative with Iveco, Fita CNA, Grandi Navi Veloci, which is a cruise company. So it was an event that showed that to go from Leghorn to Palermo, you will get there 8 hours earlier with the ship, with a cruise. You would be, well rested. The driver was very happy, and you would save 30%. So it was an excellent initiative that in a year, and I was awarded prizes all over Europe, allowed us to multiply by 6, six-fold transportation, sea-based transportation, and also change routes. Even though the person who allowed us to rediscover this sea route was Ciampi from Leghorn. He was the president of the Italian Republic. I would never have understood that without him. Anyway, the problem is that we face this by by only focusing on financially advantageous routes. And the only routes that are still existing are those from Civitavecchia or from Salerno going to Sicily, and that in addition competes with a motorway where you don't pay toll-free. So going to Sicily, passing through the sea, in competition with a motorway that is toll-free, is still though more convenient than taking the motorway. So the reason why the maritime highways are not proposed is that from that on going north there are motorways with pay tolls. So I'm just being provocative, of course, but still I would like to produce a second version of this dual event from Leghorn to Nice and show what happens to get there faster with a cruise, with a ferry, and showing at the same time that we can reduce road-based transportation considerably. So short sea shipping is a system that exists and that can be adopted, but what we can do, the most important thing we can do is we can reduce traffic on motorways. This is a particularly dramatic image. I remember a TV program in 2004 when I was talking about this precisely. I was saying we've got a road infrastructure that was created for another type of traffic. They will deteriorate very rapidly. They have cost us so much money. So the maritime highway opportunity is a turning point, but we have to create routes and just pay for them with state's money. Do you think local railways would exist if we didn't have state funds? We give to the sea what one region provides to its own internal transportation network. So with a small investment, we will make great changes. This is a chart I drew by hand. It's excessive, of course, just to show you that it's not a project. But anyway, this country can really become interconnected. You must be able to board in Genoa at a given time, and you must be sure that you are getting on the boat at that time. It needs to be simplified. You do not need specific parking areas because, yes, you travel at sea but with a car. It's not complicated as an intermodality. You just, drive on the boats and that's it. So there have been some initiatives also in terms of funding, but these contributions are very, very limited. They amount to less of what Tuscany provides to railway-based transportation. These are the ferries that exist at the moment. They are real. They are all over the world. Also, Fincantieri is developing this type of boats. Small ferries can be dual fuel, and this is from Roasio. All forms of transport, and these things have already been said, can take advantage of this solution. We would like to have data for 2018 to show you how the sales of LNG have increased dramatically. And in this slide, what I say is that with a small-scale liquefactor, you can actually feed and fuel a series of refilling stations in many ports, and this should be provided following, an internal debate among entrepreneurs. So you are entrepreneurs, you don't read other players in order to decide to provide a deposit for LNG near a port. It's quite self-evident. So if we look at all these aspects, if we were thinking of a general agreement with investments and reconversions, we could get there.